Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're moving on to episode 3 of my introductory series on design and CAD. In this series we're using the parametric, in context and solid modelling features of Fusion 360 to design an enclosure for electronics. In the first episode we created our reference geometry from the headphone amplifier. In the second episode we created the top half of the enclosure by using some in-context modelling features and solid modelling capabilities. And in this episode we're going to be using some similar features to last episode to create the base of the enclosure. So let's get on with that. So picking up from where we left off last time, we've got our two components that we've already made, and again for this episode we will need a new component, and this one we're going to call the amp enclosure bottom asphalt base. And this is going to be the base of the enclosure, strangely enough. To start with, let's create a sketch. Typically we'd start on the XY plane, but in this case, we're going to start on the edge of the top box. Now we want to take that geometry onto our current sketch. So use the projection tool and click the 4 lines of the outside of the enclosure. Let's hide the headphone amp for now, just to make it simple. And again, we're going to use the offset tool. So letter O, and that's going to offset those 4 lines inwards. We only want to go 0.5 mil. That's just enough to make sure that our base fits the box, even if the tolerances are a little bit off. The next thing we need to add is circles for the holes, because we want to be able to screw through our base. So let's turn off the enclosure and show the headphone amp, because these are the right circle sizes that we need. This is a 3.6mm hole, which we can use as a clearance hole for an M3 screw. So we've got quite a few little lines here now. Let's hide those two. And these should be all that we need for our base. Now let's add a bit of thickness to our base. So select the sketch that we've made, and we need to determine how far up this is going to go. Let's open our headphone amp, and we've got the base of our solder points, the distance down that those solder points came. So we're going to select to object, and we're going to go up to that face. And we want an offset. Remember to select extend faces. We want an offset of 0.5mm. 0.5 mil clearance should be plenty. And for that we're going to create a new body, as we haven't got a body in this component yet. That's looking good for the very bottom of the base, but there's still quite a big gap here between the PCB and the base. So we need some material in there. To do that, let's create a sketch. On this sketch we want to have a couple of other sketches. So first thing we need is this. So let's project and take this whole lot here. That should have brought all of those features onto our current sketch. There we have it, like that. Excellent. So now let's get the solder points. So when we're extruding upwards to the PCB, we want to make sure we're avoiding those solder points. That line that we put on the first sketch in our reference geometry is going to outline those, so we don't accidentally extrude plastic up into those points. So obviously we need that geometry. Let's hide this body. Let's hide this sketch. Let's select the project tool, and let's take this. So now we need to offset this. So use the offset tool and select that full curvature, and we want to set it off 1mm, but we're going to want to out 1mm. Just like that. Starting to look a little bit complicated, but hopefully it will make sense when we join these things together. So let's use the extrude tool, and we want to select that point just there. Open the headphone amp, and we want a distance to be to the object, and we're going to go to the underside face. Perfect. Extend faces, join the material, ta-da! So hopefully you can see how that's worked. We've basically used the reference geometry of the solder points to make sure when we extrude upwards we avoid them. We've got holes from the PCB and the outer distance from the enclosure, and that's given us a nice base which should be nice and solid for screwing to. So that's all looking pretty good, but at the moment when you try and screw into this, your screw is just going to stick straight out the bottom. That might be something you want. You could use it as feet, but I want mine to be completely recessed, as in cut out, so they're flush. So to do that, again, create a sketch. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this so far. And again, we don't need to project this time because the geometry is already there. Selecting the center of these holes, we've actually created a constraint there that we don't want. Make these all equal. So we want the diameter to be just larger than the size of the head of an M3 button head or socket head screw. Button head's probably preferable because it's slightly lower profile, and so the head width is about 5.6 mil. So we're going to go with a 6.2 millimeter. In fact, let's just go 6 millimeter hole. We're going to extrude that downwards, so this is going to be a cut operation. Technically we want all of it like so. We're going to be going down 2 millimeters. Make sure it's set to cut, no taper, objects to cut, just the one body, okay. So now that slight counterbore has given us something to, somewhere for the head of the screw to sit. I think actually we want to extrude that slightly more. 2 millimeters might not be enough, especially if you want to have a button head screw. So I'm going to change it to 3 millimeters. Again, you just select the feature down here, double click it, and change what you want your offset distance to be. The last thing we need for our base is somewhere to be able to pick it up from. At the moment, there's nothing really to get your finger in if you want to, once you put the base on, or if you've screwed it down, or even if you haven't screwed it down yet and you need to take it off, there's nowhere to even sort of get your fingernail in the side. So we're just going to create a little gap in the side so we can do that. So hiding the other bodies, just create a sketch. And we're going to use a mirror line to make sure it's central. We're going to create a sketch like this. And then we're going to mirror it. So select those lines, select this line and mirror. We want the total width of the slot to be 10 millimeters and the depth of the slot to be 1 millimeter. And again, we're going to use the extruded cut. And we're going to go through the object to this point here. So that's pretty much it for the base. If we show our other components, you can see how that's going to fit together. From this section analysis, you can see how the screw head fits, where the screw head goes as a clearance, and then where it can tap into in the plastic. We can also see here how the solder points are cleared by 0.5 mil and 1 mil at the sides, so there's no collision. You can see how the different areas interact. So that brings episode 3 to a close. Let's take this opportunity to recap. In the first episode, we created our reference geometry from the headphone amplifier. In the second episode, we created the top half of the enclosure by using in-context modeling, using as few dimensions as possible. And in the third episode, which is this one, we created the base using similar techniques to last episode. In the next episode, we're going to be focusing on some slightly more advanced modeling techniques in order to design the volume dial. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I shall see you in episode 4.